Carex woke to soft lights and the steady beep of medical equipment. His body ached everywhere. His arm was wrapped in bandages. Something tight pressed against his ribs. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "Easy," a voice said. "Don't move too fast." He turned his head and saw Ba Yo-young standing beside his bed. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, but she was smiling. "How long?" Carex managed to ask. 3 days. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." She adjusted something on one of the machines. "You had a concussion, 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, and enough bruises to paint a rainbow. But you're going to be fine." 3 days. Carex's mind felt fuzzy, struggling to remember. The battle. The raiders. The cargo bay? My siblings? He asked urgently. "Safe, all of them. They've been waiting outside this door for you to wake up." The Yo-young's smile grew wider. "They refused to leave. Ji-yoon has been bringing them food and blankets." Relief flooded through him. They were safe. That was all that mattered. Then another thought struck him, sharp and painful. "Taeho?" Byeong's smile faltered, but didn't disappear completely. She moved aside, and Carex saw the second bed in the medical bay. Taeho lay there, connected to machines. But his eyes were open. The human was looking right at him. "Hey, little one," Taeho said. His voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. But it was there. "You're alive," Carex breathed. "They said you were dying." "I was. I am." Taeho coughed, and Byo-young helped him take a sip of water. "But while you were fighting, a Terran medical ship responded to our distress call. They brought experimental treatments. New medicine. It won't cure me, but it's keeping me alive." Byo-young explained further. "The radiation damage is permanent. He'll never fully recover. But the treatments have stabilized him. He can live with it. Years, maybe. Not the weeks we thought he had." Carex felt his throat tighten. He tried to speak, but couldn't find words. "You saved us." He finally managed to say. Taeho shook his head slightly. "No, you saved us. I just taught you how." "I was so scared," Carex admitted. His voice cracked. "Every second of that fight I wanted to run and hide." "Being scared is normal," Taeho said. "I'm scared right now, lying here, knowing my body will never be the same. But you didn't let fear stop you. That's what matters." The door opened and 11 young Rexians burst into the room. Cyrex's siblings swarmed his bed, all trying to touch him at once, their voices overlapping in excitement and relief. "You're awake. We heard you fight. You beat them all. You were so brave." Carex let them cluster around him, their scales bright with happiness. He felt tears on his face and didn't bother to hide them. He had thought he might never see them again. The youngest cub, the one who had asked if Taeho would wake up, pushed through to the front. "You protected us," the small one said seriously. "Just like Taeho." "I tried," Carex said. "I tried to remember everything he taught me." "You did more than that," Ji-yoon said from the doorway. Hyeon-soo stood beside her. The Holfik scout ship sent a message before they retreated. They said they wouldn't return to this sector. "You scared them off." "I didn't do it alone," Carex said quickly. "You all helped. The traps, the training, everything. But you're the one who stood at the front," Hyeon-soo said. "You're the one who risked everything." Word spread fast through the frontier. Of Rexian cub who fought like a human. A child who had defended his family against trained warriors. Ships passing through the sector shared the story. It reached stations and colonies. People talked about it over drinks, and Niels thought the Rexian Council heard about it too. They sent an official delegation to the ship 2 weeks later. An elder Vrexian, her scales dark green with age, stood in the cargo bay where Carex had made his final stand. The Council wishes to honor you, she said formally. We want to create a new position. Guardian of the Young. You would be the first. You would train to protect other cubs, to teach them what you learned. It was an incredible offer. A position of honor. Recognition from the highest levels of Rexian society. Kai-Rex looked at Taeho, who sat in a wheelchair nearby. The human had recovered enough to leave the medical bay, though he would never walk unaided again. I'm grateful, Kai-Rex said slowly, but I have to refuse. The elder's scales flickered in surprise. Why? Because I'm still learning, Kai-Rex explained. Taeho has so much more to teach me. Not just about fighting. About being someone worth following. I'm not ready to teach others yet. The elder considered this. Then she nodded. Wisdom in one so young. Very well. But the offer will remain open when you are ready. After she left, Taeho called K-Rex over. You didn't have to refuse that for me. I didn't refuse it for you, Kai-Rex said. I refused it for me. I meant what I said. I have more to learn. Taeho smiled. Then I'd better make sure I stay alive long enough to teach you. Life on the ship settled into a new normal over the following months. Taeho could no longer fight, but he could teach. He held classes for all 12 cubs, showing them not just combat, but survival skills. How to think strategically. How to stay calm in danger. How to protect themselves and each other. Kai-Rex absorbed everything. But he also noticed something else. His siblings were changing. They paid attention in ways Rexian cubs usually didn't. They asked questions. They practiced skills. The youngest ones started helping the older ones. They're developing faster than they should, Baoyoung observed one day. She was reviewing their brain scans. Rexian cubs normally remain mentally immature until age 10 or 11. But yours are showing advanced cognitive development. All of them. Why? Ji-Yoon asked. Because they were given responsibility, Baoyoung said. Because they saw their brother risk everything, and it taught them they could be more than helpless children. They're growing up faster because they have something to grow up for. Hyun-Soo started teaching the cubs practical engineering. Ji-Yoon taught them navigation and tactics. Baoyoung taught them emergency medicine. The ship became a floating school, and the cubs became students of a very human philosophy. Never stop learning. Never stop improving. 6 months after the battle, a small ceremony was held in the cargo bay. Taeho, still in his wheelchair, but stronger than he had been, presented each cub with a patch. It showed the ship's symbol with a human handprint beside a Rexian claw print. This represents family, Taeho said. Not family by blood, but family by choice. We choose to protect each other. We choose to stand together. That's what makes us strong. Each cub wore their patch with pride. Even the youngest understood what it meant. That night, K-Rex sat with Taeho on the observation deck, watching stars drift past the window. His scales had fully darkened now, no longer the pale blue of youth. He looked older, though he was still just 10 years old. Do you regret it? Taeho asked quietly. Growing up so fast? K-Rex thought about it. He had lost his childhood that day he decided to fight. He could never get that back. But he had gained something else. Purpose. Understanding. A connection to his family that went deeper than just shared genetics. No, he said finally. I regret that you got hurt. I regret that we were in danger. But I don't regret what I learned. You showed me that protecting others is the best thing anyone can do. You know what's funny? Taeho said. I came to this ship thinking I was the teacher. The guardian. The one who would show you how to survive. But you taught me something too. What? That courage isn't something only humans have. It's not in our biology or our history. It's a choice anyone can make. You chose to be brave when I couldn't be. And that's the most human thing I've ever seen anyone do. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. The ship continued its journey through the frontier, carrying its unusual crew toward whatever came next. The youngest cub appeared in the doorway. "Hi, Rex. Can you help me with the training drill? I can't get the stance right." Rex stood up. "Of course. Come on, I'll show you." As the youngest followed him out, asking questions in a rapid stream, Tejo smiled. He watched them go. This strange family he had somehow become part of. In the end, he thought it didn't matter what species you were. What mattered was who you chose to protect and who chose to protect you. That was the real meaning of family. And that was the greatest lesson he could ever teach. The ship sailed on through the darkness, carrying its crew of humans and Vrexians into an uncertain future. But whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, because that's what family did. And this family, strange as it was, had already proven they could survive anything. As long as they stood together. The rifle kicked hard against Rex's shoulder. The shot went wide, missing the raider by inches. But it didn't matter. The important thing was that he had fired. The raider roared and raised his weapon. Rex threw himself sideways as plasma bolts burned through the air where he had been standing. He scrambled on all fours toward the ventilation shaft, just like Ji-Yoon had taught him. Small and fast. Don't give them a target. He reached the vent and pulled himself inside. Behind him, the raider was too big to follow. The alien fired into the shaft, but Rex was already moving, crawling through the narrow space. His armor scraped against metal. His heart hammered in his chest. This was real. This was actually happening. He emerged in Corridor C, exactly where Hansu said he would. Two raiders were advancing down the hall, weapons ready. They hadn't seen him yet. Rex grabbed the wall panel and flipped the gravity switch. Both raiders suddenly floated off the floor, their arms spinning as they tried to orient themselves. Their weapons fired randomly, shots hitting the ceiling and walls. Rex aimed carefully this time, bracing himself against the wall like Bill Young had shown him. He fired 3 times. The first shot missed. The second hit a raider in the leg. The third hit the other in the chest. Both aliens roared in pain and fury. Rex ran before they could recover. Don't stand and fight. Hit and run. Always run. He heard an explosion behind him. Hansu had triggered one of the traps they had set. A section of wall collapsed, blocking the corridor. That would slow the raiders down. But not for long. More footsteps, coming from all directions. They were spreading through the ship, hunting him. Rex ducked into a maintenance shaft and paused to catch his breath. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped his rifle. Fear screamed through his body, demanding that he hide, that he curl up and make himself small. Fear is not the enemy, he whispered to himself. Hesitation is the enemy. He forced his hands to steady. He checked his rifle charge. Still half full. He had smoke grenades on his belt. He could do this. He had to do this. A raider appeared at the end of the shaft. Too close. Rex threw a smoke grenade and the corridor filled with thick gray clouds. He heard the raider coughing, stumbling. He used the confusion to slip past, staying low, moving through the smoke like a shadow. He emerged near the cargo bay. 3 raiders were there, searching for him. Ji-Yoon's voice crackled over his communicator. "West side now." Rex ran west. Behind him, the cargo bay doors suddenly sealed shut. The 3 raiders were trapped inside. They would cut through eventually, but it bought him time. Time was everything. He heard screaming. Humans screaming. His blood went cold. One of the humans had been found. Rex ran toward the sound. He found Hansu backed into a corner by 2 raiders. The engineer's weapon was empty. He was trying to reload, but his hands fumbled with fear. Chi-Rex didn't think. He just acted. He ran at the nearest raider and fired his rifle on full automatic. The shots hit the alien's back. The raider spun around, surprised to see a cub attacking him. That moment of surprise cost him. Hyan-Su finished reloading and shot the raider in the head. The alien went down. The second raider grabbed Chi-Rex before he could run. Massive hands lifted him off the floor. The alien squeezed, and Chi-Rex felt his armor crack under the pressure. He couldn't breathe. His rifle fell from his hands. This was it. This was how he died. Then Bio Young appeared from a side corridor. She had a plasma cutter, a tool, not a weapon. She slashed it across the raider's arm. The alien dropped K-Rex and turned on her. K-Rex hit the floor hard. Pain shot through his side where the armor had broken. But he could still move. He grabbed his rifle and fired upward into the raider's back. The alien fell forward, collapsing on top of Bio-Young. Hyan-Su pulled her out from under the body. She was hurt but alive. "Thank you," she gasped. Chi-Rex didn't answer. He was already moving again. Because more were coming. Always more. The battle became a blur. K-Rex moved through the ship like Taeho had, using every lesson he had learned. He triggered fire suppressant foam that trapped 2 raiders and hardened chemicals. He overloaded a power conduit that exploded in a shower of sparks, forcing raiders back. He led them through corridors where Ji-Yoon had rigged more traps. But he was getting tired. His small body wasn't built for this. Each fight took more out of him. His armor had cracks all over it now. Blood ran down his side from where the raider had grabbed him. His left arm didn't work quite right anymore, and the raiders were getting smarter. They stopped chasing him alone. They moved in groups. They checked corners. They were learning. Finally, inevitably, they cornered him in the cargo bay. K-Rex had run out of places to hide. The ventilation shafts were blocked. The doors were sealed. 5 raiders stood between him and the only exit, and their commander stood at the front. Massive, even for a Holthic, covered in scars from 100 battles. He looked at the small cub and laughed. "This is what stopped us," the commander said in broken standard. "A baby?" K-Rex raised his rifle. It was almost out of charge. Maybe 3 shots left. Against 5 raiders, the math was simple. He was going to die here, but he didn't lower his weapon. He thought of his siblings in the shelter. If he died, at least he had bought them time. Maybe help would arrive. Maybe they would survive. That was enough. It had to be enough. "This is my family," K-Rex said in Holthic. The words came out rough, unpracticed. Bio Young had taught him the phrase just in case. "You will not take them." The commander stopped laughing. He stared at the cub, this tiny creature standing against impossible odds. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect? Confusion? It didn't matter. He raised his energy blade. "Brave words, little one. But bravery doesn't stop steel." K-Rex knew he couldn't win, but he could fight. He had learned that from Taeho. You fight until you can't fight anymore. You protect what you love until your last breath. He aimed his rifle at the commander and prepared to fire his last. Shots. Then the cargo bay door exploded outward. Ji-Yoon had activated the emergency decompression. The outer doors blew open, and space itself reached in with invisible hands. The raiders were sucked toward the opening, their boots losing grip on the floor. Chi-Rex had been ready. He had wrapped cables around his arm, cables Hyan-Su had told him to secure earlier. The cables held him in place as the raiders flew past him, screaming, pulled into the void. The commander grabbed onto a support beam. He held on with incredible strength, his eyes locked on K-Rex. The cub and the warrior stared at each other across the rushing wind. Then the commander's grip failed. With a final roar of rage, he was pulled into space with his warriors. Ji-yoon sealed the door. The rushing wind stopped. Silence fell over the cargo bay. Kai-Rex collapsed. The cables had cut into his arm. His whole body screamed with pain. But he was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was alive. Hyun-soo and Bo Young found him there, lying on the floor, still holding his empty rifle. "It's over," Bo Young said, kneeling beside him. "You did it. You actually did it." Kai-Rex tried to answer, but his voice wouldn't work. His vision was going dark. He had pushed his body too far. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness took him was Ji-yoon's voice over the communicator. "I'm reading a ship approaching. Terran military. They're responding to our distress call. Help had arrived." Just in time, Kai-Rex let himself fall into darkness, knowing his siblings were safe. The cargo bay became a training ground. 7 hours until the raiders arrived. 7 hours to teach a child how to fight. Hyun-soo worked first. He was an engineer, not a soldier, but he knew the ship better than anyone. He led Kai-Rex through the corridors, pointing out every system, every panel, every weakness. "See this?" He tapped a wall panel. "This controls the gravity in Corridor C. If you flip this switch, anyone in that hallway floats. Can't aim a weapon when you're spinning in the air." Kai-Rex memorized it. They moved to the next section. These are emergency fire suppressants. They release foam that hardens in seconds. Trap someone in it. They're not going anywhere. Hyun-soo showed him the activation sequence. But you only get one shot. Once it's used, it takes hours to reload. They walked the entire ship. Kai-Rex learned where power conduits could be overloaded to create distractions, where doors could be sealed remotely, where the lights could be killed to create darkness. The ship itself was his weapon, and Hyun-soo showed him how to use every part of it. Ji-Yun took over next. She spread a map of the ship across a table in the mess hall. "Raiders think in straight lines," she explained. "They want to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. So you don't give them straight lines." She traced paths on the map. "You use the vents, the maintenance shafts, the spaces between walls. You're small. They're not. That's your advantage." She showed him the routes Tahoe had used during the last fight, the places where the human had appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Kai-Rex studied each one, imagining himself moving through those spaces. "Never stand and fight," Ji-yoon continued. "You hit them and run. Always run. Make them chase you into traps. Make them angry. Angry enemies make mistakes. But what if I can't run?" Kai-Rex asked. "What if they corner me?" Ji-yoon was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Then you do what Taeho would do. You fight like hell and hope it's enough." The hours passed too quickly. Kai-Rex drank water when Bo Young forced it on him. He ate protein bars without tasting them. Every minute was precious, and he refused to waste a single one. Dr. Bo Young taught him last. She took him to the armory and showed him weapons he had only seen in Taeho's hands. "Can you lift this?" She handed him a standard rifle. Kai-Rex tried. It was heavy, awkward in his small hands. But he managed to hold it level. Barely. "The recoil will knock you back," Bo Young warned. "Brace yourself against something when you fire. A wall, a crate, anything solid." She showed him how to aim, how to reload, how to clear a jam. His hands fumbled at first, but he practiced until the movements became smoother. Not natural, but possible. "I'm not a good teacher for this," Bo Young admitted. "I was a Marine, but that was years ago. I'm a doctor now." "You're teaching me enough," Kai-Rex said. Then she taught him the most important lesson. She made him sit down and look her in the eyes. "Fear is not the enemy," she said firmly. "Every soldier feels fear. Taeho felt it every time he fought. I felt it every day in the service. Fear keeps you alert. It keeps you alive. Then what is the enemy?" Karex asked. "Hesitation. The moment you freeze, the moment you doubt, that's when you die. So feel the fear. Let it sharpen your mind. But don't let it stop your hands from moving." Kyrex nodded slowly. He understood in theory. Whether he could do it in practice, he wouldn't know until the moment came. With 2 hours left, Byo-young fitted him with pieces of Taeho's armor. The chest plate was too big, but she strapped it tight. The arm guards fit better. The helmet was impossible, too large for his head. He would have to fight without it. "You look ridiculous," Hyansu said, but his voice was gentle. "I feel ridiculous," Kyrex admitted. The armor was heavy and uncomfortable, but it might stop a shot or two. That might be enough to make a difference. Ji-yoon handed him smoke grenades, small enough for his hands. "Use these to confuse them, to cover your escape. Don't try to be a hero." With 1 hour remaining, they sealed the cubs in the emergency shelter. Kyrex's siblings didn't want to go. They cried and clung to him. He hugged each one, telling them everything would be fine, lying to make them feel better. The youngest, barely 5 years old, looked up at him with wide eyes. "Will Taeho wake up to help you?" "Taeho is resting," Kyrex said gently. "But he taught me what to do. I'll be okay." He hoped it was true. He closed the shelter door and heard the locks engage. Whatever happened next, at least they would be safe. The 3 humans stood with him in the corridor. They had weapons too. They would fight alongside him. But they were scientists and engineers, not soldiers. They knew how this would probably end. "You can still hide in the shelter with them," Bo-young said quietly. "We won't think less of you." Karex shook his head. "If I hide, they'll find us eventually. Better to meet them on my terms." "Very human of you," Ji-yoon said with a sad smile. Kyrex looked down at the rifle in his hands. It felt wrong, alien, too heavy. But he held it anyway. Taeho said humans aren't special because of what they are. They're special because they protect what they love. So maybe I can be a little bit human. Just for today. The ship's sensors screamed an alert. The Holthik raiding party had arrived. Multiple ships this time. They were coming in force. Hyansu checked his datapad. 15 raiders on the first boarding party. Cutting through the airlock now. Kyrex took a deep breath. His heart pounded so hard, he thought it might break through his chest. His hands shook. Every instinct told him to run and hide. But he thought of Taeho lying in the medical bay. The human who had protected them for 3 years. Who had fought until his body broke. Who had never, not once, run away when they needed him. "I can do this," Kyrex whispered to himself. "I can do this." What was that? Byo-young asked. "Nothing." Kyrex checked his rifle one more time. "Just remembering something Taeho taught me." "What did he teach you?" Ji-yoon asked. Kai-Rex thought about all those training videos he had watched. All those moments he had studied. And he remembered one recording in particular. Taeho talking to himself late at night, preparing for a patrol. He said that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. Kyrex looked up at the 3 humans. "So I'm going to be scared. But I'm going to do it anyway." The airlock breach alarm sounded. The raiders were inside the ship. Kyrex moved to his first position, a junction where he could see them coming. He crouched behind a support beam, rifle ready. His whole body trembled. His mind screamed at him to run, but his hands stayed steady on the weapon. Because Taeho had taught him that too. Control what you can control. Everything else doesn't matter. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. getting closer. The raiders were coming. Kyrex closed his eyes for just a second. He thought of his siblings in the shelter. He thought of Taiho in the medical bay. He thought of everything worth protecting. Then he opened his eyes, aimed his rifle, and waited. The first raider rounded the corner. Kyrex saw his own reflection in the alien's helmet. A small Vrexian cub wearing armor too big for him, holding a weapon he barely knew how to use. The raider hesitated, confused by what he was seeing. That hesitation was exactly what Kyrex needed. He pulled the trigger, and the battle began. Kyrex didn't leave the medical bay. While his 11 siblings eventually wandered back to their quarters, pulled away by hunger or exhaustion, the eldest cub remained beside Taiho's bed. He sat on the floor when the chairs were too uncomfortable and leaned against the wall when sleep tried to claim him. But he never left. Dr. Bill Young brought him food. He ate without tasting it. The engineer, Hyan Su, tried to convince him to rest in his own bed. Kyrex refused. The navigator, Ji Yoon, sat with him sometimes, reading reports in silence while the cub watched over the dying human. But mostly, Kyrex watched the datapad he had borrowed from the ship's computer. On its screen, training recordings played in an endless loop. Taiho running drills in the cargo bay. Taiho practicing with weapons. Taiho teaching himself alien languages late at night. Every moment the security cameras had captured over 3 years, Kyrex consumed like he was starving. "What are you doing?" Bio asked on the second day. She had come to check Taiho's vital signs again. They were getting worse. Kai-Rex looked up at her. His scales had darkened slightly from their usual pale blue. "Learning," he said simply. "Learning what?" "How he moves. How he thinks. How he survived." Ba Young knelt down beside the young Rexian. She studied his face, seeing something there that surprised her. This wasn't grief. This was determination. "Why?" she asked gently. "Because the raiders will come back," Kyrex said. He spoke with absolute certainty. "Tana said they always do. They don't like losing. They'll want revenge." Ba Young felt cold. The cub was right. It was how the Holthics operated. They had lost warriors here, and their pride wouldn't let that stand. They would return, and when they did, the ship would be defenseless. "We'll call for help," she said. But even as she spoke, she knew it was weak. Help was weeks away. The raiders could come any time. How did he do it? Kyrex asked, turning back to his datapad. "He's not bigger than them. Not faster. The scanners say humans are weaker than most species. So how did one human stop them all?" Bio Young sat down on the floor beside him. She was quiet for a long moment, thinking about how to answer. Finally, she said, "Humans aren't special because of what we are. We're special because of what we refuse to give up." Kyrex looked at her, his large eyes blinking slowly. "Every species has advantages," Bio Young continued. "The Holthics are strong. The Xylith are fast. The Centaurians are smart. But humans? Our advantage is that we don't know when to quit. We keep fighting even when logic says we should stop. We keep learning even when we fail. We protect what we love even when it costs us everything." She gestured to Taiho lying in the bed. "He didn't protect you because he was strong enough. He protected you because giving up was never an option. Not while you were in danger." Kyrex looked at the sleeping human. Taiho's face was pale, and his breathing was shallow. Machines beeped softly, tracking the slow decay of his body. "Can I learn that?" Kyrex asked. "The not giving up part?" Bio Young felt her throat tighten. This child was 9 years old. In Vrexian terms, barely past being a hatchling. His brain wouldn't fully develop for another year. He should be playing games and learning basic skills, not thinking about fighting raiders. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see a child. She saw someone who had made a choice. "Yes," she said. "I think you can." On the third day, the ship's sensors detected something. A small craft approaching from the direction the raiders had fled. It was moving slowly, scanning, searching, not attacking yet. Just watching. Ji-yoon called an emergency meeting in the bridge. The three humans gathered while the cubs slept in their quarters. All except Kai-Rex, who stood at the door, listening. "It's a Holthic scout ship," Ji-yoon said, pulling up the sensor data. "They're marking our position. The main force will follow." "How long?" Hyun-soo asked. 8 hours. Maybe less. "The weapons are still offline," Hyun-soo said. "The raiders damaged too much. I need days to fix them, not hours." "Then we run," Ji-yoon suggested. "We can't outrun them forever, but maybe long enough to reach help." "The engines are damaged too," Hyun-soo reminded her. "We'd burn out halfway." They all fell silent. The math was simple and terrible. They had no weapons, no speed, and no time. When the raiders returned, they would take the ship and everyone on it. "I'll fight them." The three humans turned. Kai-Rex stood in the doorway. His scales had changed color again, darker now, with hints of deep green at the edges. It was a color Bo-young had only seen in adult Rexians. "Kai-Rex, no," Bo-young started. "Taeho can't protect us anymore," the cub interrupted. His voice was steady. "Someone has to?" "You're a child," Hyun-soo said, his voice rising. "You've never fought anyone in your life." "Then teach me." Kai-Rex walked into the room. He stood in front of the three humans, his small frame barely reaching their waists. But he stood straight, his head high. "You have 8 hours. Teach me what you can." "This is insane," Hyun-soo said. "You'll be killed in seconds." "Maybe," Kai-Rex agreed. "But if I do nothing, we all die. My siblings die. At least this way, there's a chance." Ji-yoon looked at Bo-young. The doctor looked at Hyun-soo. They all knew what the cub was offering. Sacrifice, the most human of concepts, offered by someone who wasn't human at all. "He's right," Ji-yoon said quietly. "We can't ask a child to do this," Bo-young protested. "You're not asking," Kai-Rex said. "I'm choosing." Hyun-soo ran his hands through his hair, looking like he wanted to argue more. But what could he say? They had no other options. No other plan. Just a young Vrexian offering to stand between his family and certain death. "If we do this," Hyun-soo said slowly, "if we actually do this insane thing, you listen to everything we say, everything. No questions, no arguments. Can you do that?" "Yes," Kai-Rex said immediately. Bo-young stood up. She walked to a storage locker and opened it. Inside was her old armor from her days in the Terran Marines. She pulled out pieces, holding them up to Kai-Rex's small frame. Most were too big, but some might work. "Then we start now," she said. "We don't have time to waste." Kai-Rex nodded. As the humans began to move around him, gathering weapons and planning strategies, the cub felt fear twist in his stomach. He was terrified. The thought of facing those raiders made him want to hide in the shelter and never come out. But then he thought of Taeho lying in the medical bay. The human had been afraid too. Fear was in every species. But Taeho had fought anyway. If the human could face death to protect them, then Kai-Rex could face death to protect his siblings. He just hoped he could be brave enough. When the time came in the medical bay, Taeho opened his eyes briefly. He heard voices, distant and worried. He tried to focus, to understand what was happening, but his body was shutting down. The radiation had done too much damage. He wanted to get up, wanted to help, but his body wouldn't listen anymore. All he could do was close his eyes and hope. Hope that whatever was coming, his cubs would survive it, even if he couldn't be there to see it. The alarm screamed through the colony ship like a wounded animal. Taeho ran down the metal corridor, his boots pounding against the floor. His rifle was already in his hands. Behind him, 12 young Vrexians scattered in fear, their blue scales shimmering under the emergency lights. "Get to the shelter. Now!" Taeho shouted. The cubs didn't argue. They had learned to trust the human over the past 3 years. Kyrex, the eldest at 9 years old, herded his younger siblings toward the safe room at the end of the hall. He looked back once at Taeho, and their eyes met. The human nodded. The cub nodded back. Then Kyrex sealed the door behind them. Tae-Ho stood alone in the corridor. The ship shook as something hit the outer hull. The Holfic raiders had finally breached the ship. He could hear their heavy footsteps echoing through the ventilation system. They were coming. He had faced raiders before. The Holfics were bad news across the frontier. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who got in their way. This ship carried rare minerals worth millions of credits. The raiders would tear through every deck to find them. Taeho checked his rifle. Full charge. He had 4 grenades on his belt and a knife strapped to his leg. Not much against a full raiding party, but it would have to be enough. It always had to be enough. The first raider came around the corner fast. Taeho shot him twice in the chest. The alien went down hard. 2 more appeared behind the first. Taeho threw a grenade and ducked behind a support beam. The explosion shook the walls. When he looked again, 1 raider was dead, and the other was crawling away, leaving green blood on the floor. Tae-Ho moved forward. He knew this ship better than anyone. Every corridor, every junction, every place to hide. He had walked these halls 1,000 times, always thinking about how to defend them. Now that knowledge kept him alive. For 6 hours, he fought. He moved through the ship like a ghost, hitting the raiders where they didn't expect it and disappearing before they could respond. He used every trick he knew. He cut power to sections of the ship, forcing the raiders to move through darkness. He sealed doors behind them, trapping them in dead ends. He fired from vents and crawl spaces too small for the larger aliens to follow, but there were too many of them. For every raider he killed, 2 more appeared. His rifle ran out of charge. He switched to his pistol. That ran out too. He used his knife. His grenades were gone. His armor was cracked in 3 places. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. Still, he fought. Because behind that sealed door were 12 children who trusted him to keep them safe. The turning point came near the reactor room. Taeho was trying to reach a weapons locker when a raider shot the door panel. The blast tore open the wall, and Taeho felt heat wash over him like fire. He looked down and saw the radiation warning symbol flashing red on his arm display. The plasma conduit had ruptured. Invisible poison was flooding the area. Taeho's stomach dropped. He knew what that meant. He had seen radiation sickness before. Once you took a dose this high, there was no coming back. Days, maybe a week, if he was lucky. Then his organs would fail one by one until nothing could save him. But he couldn't think about that now. The raiders were still coming. He found the weapons locker and grabbed a fresh rifle. His hand shook as he loaded it, but not from fear. The radiation was already working on his nervous system. He forced himself to focus. Just a little longer. The cubs needed just a little longer. Finally, mercifully, help arrived. The distress signal had reached a Terran patrol ship. When the raiders saw military vessels approaching, they ran for their ships and fled into the dark. They had lost too many warriors for treasure they couldn't carry. Taeho waited until he was sure they were gone. Then, and only then, did he allow himself to walk back to the shelter. His legs felt like they were made of water. His vision blurred at the edges. He put his hand against the wall to steady himself. He reached the shelter door and pressed the release button. The door slid open, and 12 pairs of eyes stared up at him. They were scared but alive. All of them. He had done it. "It's over," Taeho said. His voice sounded far away. "You're safe now." Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed. Kai-Rex caught him. The cub wasn't strong enough to hold the human's full weight, but he tried. His younger siblings rushed forward to help, all of them reaching for Taeho at once, their small hands holding on to whatever they could grab. "Taeho!" K-Rex's voice cracked. "Don't go to sleep. Stay with us." But Taeho couldn't stay awake anymore. The world went dark, and he fell into it like falling into deep water. When he woke up, he was in the medical bay. Bright lights hurt his eyes. He tried to sit up, but his body wouldn't obey. A human woman appeared beside his bed. Dr. Bo Young. He knew her. She had joined the ship 8 months ago. "Don't try to move," she said quietly. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were sad. "The cubs," Taeho managed to say. "They're fine. All 12. You saved them." She paused. "But Taeho, the radiation." "I know." He did know. He had known from the moment he saw that warning light. "How long?" "Days, maybe a week." "I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do at this range. The nearest facility that could help is 3 weeks away." Taeho closed his eyes. 3 years he had protected those cubs. 3 years of being their guardian, their teacher, their protector. And now he would leave them alone in a dangerous universe. The thought hurt worse than any wound. "Can I see them?" he asked. Bio Young nodded. She left the room and came back with the cubs following her like ducklings. They crowded around his bed, all trying to touch him at once. Their scales were pale with worry. Rexians changed color with their emotions, and right now they were all washed out with fear. Kai-Rex pushed through to the front. The eldest cub put his small hand on Taeho's arm. "You're going to be okay," Kai-Rex said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, like he could make it true by believing hard enough. Tae-Ho wanted to lie. He wanted to tell them everything would be fine. But he had never lied to them before, and he wouldn't start now. "No, little one," he said softly. "I'm not." K-Rex's scales went from pale blue to almost white. The other cubs made small, distressed sounds. But Kai-Rex didn't cry. He just held on to Taeho's arm tighter, like he could keep the human there through sheer will. "Then we'll stay with you," Kai-Rex said. "Every day. All of us." Taeho felt his chest tighten. Not from the radiation, but from something else. Something that hurt in a different way. "I'd like that," he whispered. And as the cubs settled around his bed, refusing to leave, Taeho closed his eyes and let himself rest. For the first time in 6 hours, he allowed himself to feel the pain, the fear, and the grief. But also the love. These children loved him, and he loved them. That had to be enough. That had to matter even at the end.